Hello, everybody, and welcome to Formula NR2003 Debrief. Me and Ian have a lot of stuff to talk to you about, so, let's get started. Will first talk about the major news items before we go into, talking about and reviewing the Australian Grand Prix. So, let's get started. News item is the Brazilian Grand Prix because it's at an oval. And apparently, Formula NR 2003 officials saw the recent success of how American open wheel racing is doing on ovals and decided that they will gradually try and build the number of ovals on the schedule depending how this one race goes. This is the only oval on the schedule, unless if you consider Monza one. But Monza effectively isn't an oval, but it's virtually flat out all the way around it. There's only like 2 braking zones. But, yeah, so we're going to be at an oval for Brazil. That's right, and before we get anywhere with oval racing, a lot of our international viewers will see that oval racing, if you look at a United States or an open wheel race in the US, you'll see that the close packed, full throttle racing all the way around a small track, and it's quite honestly quite dangerous, in my opinion, but the track we're going to, the Emerson Fittipaldi circuit, is very flat. It's not as high banked as, like, if you've ever seen a race at Texas Motor Speedway or not necessarily Indianapolis. Indianapolis is low banked, but you're not going to, I don't think, see as close of racing as you do there. But it's interesting because there is a lot of things you'll see in that race, in this race, that will be quite different than any Formula NR 2003 race ever. And we first have to get through Puco, though. So Puco's another interesting track that raises some safety concerns, like this oval will. So it's going to be interesting to see what the drivers do, because there is a lot of tension in the paddock. And Antonio Vella brought it up the best, saying that we've never done this before, and that they've never done this before, and as drivers and teams, we are scared or somewhat nervous about this race because you're going at insanely high speeds around this track, and you're inches apart from each other almost the entirety of the race. So this is going to be an interesting one. Yeah. There is definite safety concerns, and Red Bull brought that up. Red Bull doesn't want their cars to be at the track. I don't necessarily believe that that's the case, though. I think that Red Bull knows that cars aren't fast in a straight line. They're not. They're one of the slower cars in a straight line. They're good aerodynamically, though, so they should be pretty good in the draft. Or in the slipstream, rather. And, you're going to see a lot of slipstreaming, and they're good at cornering, but when it comes to engine power in that race, Red Bull's going to be at a huge disadvantage. So that's going to be interesting to watch, because Red Bull's questioning boycotting, and there are grumblings of another team questioning it. I would probably imagine that everybody's trying to get the Caterhams and Marussias off the grid, but for that race, because they're going to be dangerously slow at a very high speed and somewhat dangerous track. It is certainly more dangerous than any of the road course races we're used to, because it is that if there's a slower car, there's effectively nowhere to go. Well, the beauty with this track is it's not as fast as it could have been. If they would have raised the banking up a bit, it would be insanely fast. But the Rio track that we're going to is very flat, and I'm actually thinking that the Rio circuit's going to be quite interesting to watch, because if this race does well, there are talks with Canadian International for the race next year. And if Motorsport loses the date, I will truly be sad. But another one is some track in the US, which is the oval capital of the world. And the streets of New York, there's been talks that they're going to cancel that race, or that they're going to cancel the Laguna Seca race and move it to Fontana, Fontana Speedway or Auto Club Speedway in Fontana, California, instead of going to Mazda Raceway Park in Laguna Seca. The other suggestion was moving the East race of the United States to Michigan. Michigan would be fun to watch. If you've ever seen a race at Michigan, it's ridiculous. The racing, IndyCar racing at Michigan is. They're high speeds, upwards of 240 mile an hour, and close racing, but it is inherently dangerous. And with these Formula NR2003 cars, one can only hope that nothing happens. That can be said for this race going into Rio, but that's going to be a big talk when we get to Puco, is about this Rio race. And when we get into Puco, I think there's going to be a lot of talk about this, and I think that the whole attention for the New Zealand Grand Prix is going to be shifted completely to the Brazilian Grand Prix leading up to the race, and it'll be interesting to watch, because not a lot of these drivers have experience on ovals. I think Robert Jeffers Smith has, and I think the two Canadians might. I think Greg Brown Jr. has experience. I think he actually did a test session, not race, he might have, at Canadian International, and Luke Walker too. Luke Walker, I would think, hopefully would lead the Marussia Caterham train. So that should be fun to see. I'm actually looking forward to the race in Brazil. Alright, now we are going to go to the Australian GP. Ian, what were you shocked or most surprised with? Force India qualifying 4th with Vijay Pachanda, and finishing 3rd with Garofio, I still can't pronounce his name. Hold on, let me get my list out. Sorry, I'm not good with names. I should be. Yeah, Garofio. Yeah, that's his name. Franco Garofio, getting 3rd in a Force India at a track that really we didn't expect the Force Indias to do much at. We expected the Force Indias to be strong at a track like Hockenheim, Monza, or the upcoming race in Rio, but not at Barbagallo. And Barbagallo is a tight, twisty track that every year, and I still don't know why we race there, because that pit road entrance is ridiculous. First off, the pit road's on the wrong side of the track, and I've always said it should be on the other side of the track. And when we had the accident in 06, the inaugural year that we were at Barbagallo, when the car spun into pit road because there wasn't that chicane there, it nearly jeopardized the life of some crew members on, at that time, was the Midland team. It was either Midland or Super Aguri. Both teams aren't around anymore, but Midland's effectively Force India now, but and jeopardized their lives, so they put that chicane in, and the cars are set up for a nice flowing track, and that chicane's insane for them to try and handle on the setups they've got. Good point there. I think that we're gonna see a new Australian track next year. Oh, definitely. I think they've had enough. I think the teams and drivers have had enough of Barbagallo's pit lane. The track itself is pretty good. The pit lane's just insane. There's talk about Sandown looking for it. Talk of Phillip Island, which I'm not a big fan of Phillip Island. I don't think it has a lot of not Japanese. What was I thinking? I'm looking at my list again. It does have a lot of Australian track qualities, and you're going to see the track I'm pushing to get the race is either Queensland or what's the track I'm looking for? Not Bathurst. Bathurst would be insane. Can't think of it. Hidden Valley, maybe. It might be Hidden Valley. Now that I think about it, yeah. Hidden Valley. I think would be interesting to see get the date. Anyway, let's go through the teams first. Red Bull. Hulbert, being the reigning champion, I thought would do a lot better. Hulbert, he had some mechanical problems, but he really didn't impress all that much. I expected him to be up there with Volzak the entire race, but, Hulbert was, even all week, during the course of the weekend, he seemed slow. Greg Brown, on the other hand, coming from Lotus, he did pretty well over at Lotus, but, Greg Brown Jr., quite honestly, once he got to the front, he trounced the field, and once he got on the right tire compound, he drove away from everybody, and it didn't also help that you had the Marussia of Mary Shelley driving like a complete imbecile out there, and taking Antonio Vella effectively out of the race, and they say that's why he couldn't make it onto pit road, is because he had damage from the Shelley incident, but honestly, we're not going to be able to prove that, so... Greg Brown Jr., I think, is going to be a championship contender this year. Definitely. Oh, Greg Brown Jr. has the talent to do it, too. And he has the ability. He's the only thing that I think could be holding him back is his aggression. And we saw it in the race. He, frickin' dumped Bergman. Bergman was in his way and just moved him towards the end of it. Like, he really didn't want to deal with it, and... You really can't do that, but I think the officials let him off easy there. But if he keeps doing that, I think the officials are going to start cracking down on him for that, and the paddock for that, for matter. Let's go to Ferrari. Walzak impressed. Valier did not necessarily. Valier only had the lead because of his pit strategy at that time. Valier didn't impress, but Volzak looked competitive out there. He looked competent. And that was the thing with him last year, is at the start of the year, what killed him. He would have won the championship if he would have done well at Australia, New Zealand, and Brazil, which, when we were at Interlagos for Brazil, he had 3 horrible races in a row, didn't score points for the first 3 races, and then he went into China, but... Volzak proves to me that he now knows what it takes to be a champion, after losing it in the final race. After losing it, when he honestly had a chance going into USA West, second to last race. Oh, I'm sorry, the second to last race, they swapped them that year. Last year, it was Mexico. Going into Mexico, he had a decent chance at the championship, but blew it when trying to lap, one of the Caterhams. I can't remember who. Might have been one of the HRTs. You know what, I take that back, one of the HRTs it was, and... Yeah. And going into Kailami, he knew he didn't really have a chance unless something happened to Hulbert, but... Volzak looked... Or, I'm sorry, that's Valier that was having that issue. Volzak has just been kind of there. Valier... I'm sorry, I was talking about Valier. I can't believe I... There's 2 V last names, so it's easy to get them mixed up. Funny there. Volzak last year was more of a... He won Hungary, so I'll give him that. He won Hungary and the final Austrian and he finished second in the final Austrian race, which is the closest thing he gets to a home Grand Prix. Unless, well, Austria and Germany, I think, are kind of what Volzak considers his home race. On to McLaren. McLaren looked sluggish, but they did better than I thought they would. When they looked sluggish in practice and qualifying, but they really picked up during the race. Connor Atwood did pretty well. Connor Atwood did really well. Pulvakian didn't really impress. Ikea Pulvakian didn't impress, but Connor Atwood did. He knew it was his home race. There's a lot of pride with that. So Atwood, I think going into Puco, the McLarens will be more of a threat, and I wouldn't count Atwood or Pulvakian out. And Pulvakian, I know, could win this championship as well. He won it back in 2010, so Pulvakian's definitely a threat, and he could win Puco, and definitely there'll be threats because the McLaren's fast as crap around on engine speed, top speed, so he'll be fast at Rio. Lotus. Both drivers actually didn't do as bad as I thought they would. Eugene Kim was competent all day. Very competent. De Silva actually shown flashes of brilliance. He was competent out there. He got out of the way of Alita, Valia, and, well, Shelley didn't get out of his way, and really nowhere for De Silva to go in that situation, but Lotus, I don't know what they'll be good at. So, Mercedes, they had a bad race. Well, Will Lewis didn't qualify well. He got knocked out early on because he went off in qualifying. And then in the race, he just gets effectively mugged in turn 2 or turn 3. I'm not sure what they consider that, but in that second bend, Will Lewis got mugged, and then Robert Jeffers Smith, he was running top 3, top 4, top 5 all race until he crashed out into the pit wall, but Mercedes didn't really impress me. Expect them to be good at Puco. They're kind of like the McLarens, have good engines under their belt, but yeah, didn't impress me. Sauber had a good race with Carhu, but Nico Mace, he had a bad run, to say the least. Well, spinning off on lap 2, then blowing up on lap 7 isn't exactly what I like to call a good run for Mace, but, maybe he'll do something. I hope Sauber's races get better for him, but, Carhu looked competent, and, actually that Sauber, was for the budget that Sauber has, they're very underfunded, and the fact that they have a car that's not with the Caterhams or the Marushas is quite amazing to me. We obviously talked about Force India doing quite well. We are now going to the Williams team. Both drivers did somewhat bad for me. Bergman still finished the race, but they weren't competitive. They were 11th. They were fighting before the pits lanes incidents all started happening. They were battling for the final point. Both of them were. Thomas had it. Kyle Thomas had it. Bergman was trying to steal it from him. And Williams, I don't think, is going to have a good year. I don't think Williams is going to have a good year. They might have a flash of brilliance here and there, but I don't see on paper from preseason testing anywhere that they're really going to be overly competitive or have a competitive advantage over the field or at least some of the other drivers, or at least some of the other teams around them, like teams that they're expected to beat, or that they're going to be competitive with, or expected to be competitive with. Them, I can't talk today. Like the Saubers and the Force Indias. Toro Rosso had a bad race. Toro Rosso had a really, really bad race. Yeah. Petrov went off early. Mayer went off early. Bad race for them. Toro Rosso's one that I think you're going to see. One of those guys I think is going to get a Red Bull spot next year if Holbert doesn't. I don't know. One of them could get a Red Bull spot if Greg Brown or Holbert don't pan out. Yeah, I don't know about that. I think Red Bull likes the fact that they've got two competent drivers in their car, two possibly World Championship winning drivers in their car. And I think the Toro Rosso drivers better be starting looking to other places, because Vladimir Petrov actually looks competent. Jeremy Mayer in preseason testing and during practice really kind of had some head-scratcher moments when he tried going 3 wide on a Ferrari and a McLaren, who were, I think both of them were trying to warm up the tires for a mock qualifying run. And Jeremy Mayer nearly took both of them out. I'm sorry, this was in qualifying, not practice. They were getting ready, they were on their outlap, and Mayer, instead of scrubbing his lap time, because it wasn't that good anyway, that lap wasn't, he just blows right in the middle of them, and I believe it was it was Greg Brown Jr. had to make evasive action to avoid him. Marussia nearly got points today, or on the weekend. Yeah, but Mary Shelley was driving like a complete imbecile. Gotta learn to watch the blue flags, Mary. Can't just be in the middle of the track like that. You know that. You know better than that, Mary. And Luke Walker actually looked more competent than Shelley on track, to be honest with you, and it was a shame that he got taken out by Eugene Kim so early, because I thought Luke Walker could have very easily gotten points. and gotten it the right way. Luke Walker is clearly the better teammate there, the American is. The whole Shelley incident intrigues me because there was not even a talk about De Silva getting a penalty. I mean, he may have been able to, not dive up the middle like that, but in all honesty, Shelley had to give way. Shelley was going a second lap down to Velia, and was going a first lap down to De Silva. She's got to give way in that situation, and she didn't. And in all honesty, Velia had the inside line, so De Silva couldn't go below her, and the fact that she was going so slow through the corner too, I think, kind of gave the impression that De Silva wasn't really happy with her either. And he went for the gap like he's supposed to do, and Shelley is supposed to get out of the way, and she didn't. And that wasn't the only instance in that race that Shelley didn't get out of the way either. And De Silva hooked her because she was unpredictable. I mean, there's nothing you can do in that situation. Shelley looked out of her depth. I mean, she came out of GP3, and she looked out of depth in the series. She did. Clearly, she looked out of depth. And Luke Walker looked much more composed in that car over the course of the weekend. And the final team is Caterham that we gotta quickly talk about. We do need to get to other things. So, Caterham, Polakowski didn't really impress, and Suzuki had an interesting pit strategy, but I think Suzuki, she had some questionable antics in practice. Like, somehow she wound up behind the tire wall when she slipped off the track in turn 2. Not sure how she did that, but yeah, she did that. Polakowski kind of looked a bit slow. And then Suzuki also pulled that really insane move, going 3 wide with Polakowski and a Marussia that ended up forcing Polakowski off wide. I'm not sure which Marussia that was. I think it was Walker, because I think Shelley was last behind it. But, yeah. Didn't really do much. So, we have to go. So we'll be back next week after the New Zealand Grand Prix, and there's bound to be more stuff talked about the Brazilian race at Rio coming up. So, that's pretty much it. So, we'll see you next week.